Global, and I'm here with Chris Claydon, who's VP of Global Accounts for HPN Global. And I've been doing this series of interviews with small businesses and business owners because I really think that people need to hear their stories during this COVID-19 crisis. This is just, so awful. And how they're dealing with the crisis. We want people to know the stories, how they're shifting. And Chris, I met you at a LinkedIn local event a few years ago, and then for 2 years in a row at a major event, one in Indianapolis, one in Phoenix. We got to see each other work. We were both working the event in different capacities. Chris, you work hard, man.
Well, I do. It's it's in my role, having done this for about 8 years now. I made this change to just really be of service to my clients, and there's no such thing as a 40-hour work week for me. It's probably pushing your 70 or 80, but it's just because I want to genuinely positively impact my clients' meetings and conferences, and really just be of service to them. And so if that causes some extra work, then so be it.
So Chris, tell us about your family and the impact COVID-19 is having on them, and then tell us more about your business, what you do at these major events, and the terrible impact it's having right now.
Sure. So, for my family, of course, married to my wonderful wife, Megan. We've got 2 kids, and they're right at the ages of 14 and 11. And obviously having to kind of adapt to the remote and homeschooling environment, it's been tough on everybody. But I think it's been just a bit tough on our 2 kids, because they were actually going to be finishing up respectively middle school and elementary school this year, and kind of sort of making that transition. And ironically, maybe a little bit different from me when I was their age, they're missing school and they're really missing their friends. And I think it's really been it's been a tough adjustment, because they've always been in school and just going through that normal routine. And this time you can't hang out with your friends. You can't play with your friends. You've got to stay away for a while. And it's kind of a tough one that we're having to kind of adjust. But, all in all, if I look at it right now today, they're doing all right.
I saw a post on social media where a little girl wanted to go see her school. So last night her mom and her drove and parked out front of their school, and they both started crying.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's, with my wife actually being in the field of education, it's equally just challenging for her, because with the 2 schools that she services, she's had to just equally stay home, and it's been a major adaptation and a major change, just for, quite frankly, everybody, not only ourselves. But it's one of those things where you say, okay, you know what? Either we make the adaptation to this and you just keep taking one step forward in front of the other, or we don't. And there's the impact of that accordingly. So we're just, as a family, getting through it, and just making the best of it. So, we know this isn't permanent, and the kids know that too. Mostly good days, some challenging days, but we're, it's all 4 of us in the house at one time, and that hasn't happened either. So we're trying to equally balance that workload as well, but we're doing okay.
So Chris, one of the things, we all know the tremendous impact on the healthcare industry and the heroes that have stepped up and that sort of thing. But you're in the travel business, the event business, the hotel business. Mm-hmm. I mean, wow, this is nearly totally shut down. What's the outlook? What's going on?
I've been in hotel sales and kind of helping my clients on the meetings and conferences side. And so, kind of with my role that, kind of with HPN, is that I really act as kind of a third-party intermediary to really just generally help my clients in the normal world, help them go anywhere they need to go with their meeting program size and specs, and do that in a fully unbiased format. And so we're just there as kind of a consultant, just to kind of understand what their current goals are, and just help them find a way to get to whatever hotel and whatever location globally, for that matter, makes the most sense for that particular program. So we, of course, operate in that aspect. And we do that on a fully kind of complimentary consultative basis for customers. But I can tell you, I've been in the business now since 1998, and I have never seen something that has impacted truly the world as quickly as this has. At least myself, went through 9/11, and I remember when that was going on. I remember driving to work at that time, hearing the radio, and I almost like wrecked the car because I couldn't believe what was going on, right? And I think we all felt that way because that was just a complete kind of like almost violation of freedom, and we just couldn't accept that had happened. We got through that, and all in all, that was kind of sort of the at least the countrywide shutdown of that was fairly short term, and we worked to get through that process over time. Going to the crisis of 08 and 09 financially, it was tough too, but that was really more of a kind of a US type of thing. It didn't shut down the world. Some markets were impacted accordingly from that, but we were still traveling, we were still doing business, and we were still getting through those days. And, some adjustments, yes, but when you get into something like this, where it's kind of a health crisis, right? And it's something that I was talking to a customer this morning. We were traveling actually early part of March. It was roughly 45 days ago. And I remember driving home and that time in early March, and on the radio, they said, we have our first case of this, and look where we are now, and look where the country is now, and the world is now. You just can't wrap your head around this. And so from the hospitality side in the hotel industry, I'm going to call a spade and tell you, it's just been straight up gutted. There's no way to do it. I mean, I've seen good friends of mine just furloughed, laid off, let go, because there's no end in sight as to when we're kind of going to be able to get to some normalcy. And it is literally just one day at a time. And we're still not out of the woods yet by any way, but you talk about something that we've had to make adjustments to and adapt to, and, the way we're doing business now, and just general thought process, right? About like, okay, let's talk about this, 12, 24 months from now, right? You're not having those kinds of conversations. It's just, how are you doing today? And I'm just trying to kind of sort of just be I guess maybe a sounding board, or just trying to say to my clients, look, you kind of tell me, how can I help you? And that's where we're at with this right now.
It's kind of almost kind of like a mental health kind of thing right now for
everybody. It very much is, because I think that, if you look at where we were just 2 months ago, where quite frankly, this wasn't even a conversation. Like, you and I were not, this was not even a topic. It's like, just keep your eyes on it, right? Just look at the news every once in a while. Now it's shut down the world. And it's a tough one, because it was funny. Like, we had a conference call last week as a company, and our CEO we were talking about just the general part of what we do. And I think just generally humans, the nature is to be kind of a social animal and say, hey, you know what? I'd like to, engage with people and say hi and network and see how you're doing. And equally as such, he was saying, look, the thing out there is that people, live to meet and they meet to live. And that's really kind of the truth behind this. And that's really the benefit of why you go to a conference or go to a trade show, or, your company has an incentive trip, because you're having that human connectivity. And that has literally been just decimated right now. And so how we adjust to that, I don't know how we're going to do it in the future. I know this we're not going to be dealing with this long-term, obviously, but right now, what was happening is gone.
Yeah. I mean, it's so counterintuitive, especially for people that do love to network and do love to go out and meet people and do business and see their customers face to face. And I know that even right now, recently, we were just talking about, okay, what if the hockey gets going again? What's it going to look like? Or we were even talking about, okay, what if this small get together that's planned for June, what if it happens? I mean, we've been dodging each other at the grocery stores, trying to stay away from each other.
Exactly.
I mean, what does this look like even in a month or 2 months when there's small events? And, how is this going to play out in your industry? It's hard to imagine.
I think that just right now, we got to be honest. I mean, this year is going to be hit or miss at best, right? I mean, if a meeting happens, put it in the win column, but if it doesn't, expect it to not. It's so difficult right now because from the healthcare side of this, we don't have anything to curb this right now. The only curbing is you and I staying away from each other.
Right,
And
right.
we don't act that way. We don't do business normally that way. I mean, I had somebody come by the house a couple days ago and was like, I'd shake your hand, right? I'm like, nope, can't do that right now. Let's just kind of keep our distance. And so nobody currently just living, quite frankly, regardless of age, has ever dealt with anything like this in their lifetime. It's never happened. So I think right now what we're seeing is just generally unfortunately, the world from a meeting perspective is going heavily virtual for the next, I'd say, 4 to 6 months for sure. It's just where we are at with everything. And there's tools and avenues to accomplish that. But I can tell you one thing for certain, you and I talking doesn't do it the same justice as you and I going to meet somewhere and have a cocktail, right? It's not the same. It's not the same emotion, not the same feeling. You lose so much of that kind of energy and dynamic when you're just doing this kind of virtual thing. But it's just what we have to do right now to help the cause.
Absolutely. It is so, like I said, counterintuitive. And when you talk about social media, even, I mean, everybody, prior to COVID-19, everybody said that, okay, the purpose of social media is to meet people, get connected so that you can go meet somewhere and have a conversation.
Yeah. Yep. It's it's like I went to get a coffee a couple days ago and had to go in and put a mask on to grab a cup of coffee, right? Because this one local coffee shop, they were able to finally open on Saturday. And that's great. And you want to see those local businesses get up and running. But it's just, when you've walked into a restaurant, you see these like 6-foot distance signs and all these things. And it just feels so awkward. I mean, it doesn't feel normal to me at all right now. And it's probably going to take quite a while for that feeling to go that direction. But it's just what we have to do. And all I can do from my side is just say hello to my clients or colleagues and friends and just say, how are things? What can I do to help you out? And leave it at that. Because I don't think there's really much more we can do right now, except just be a genuine, caring person.
Is that what you're doing right now? You're making a lot of those calls?
I am. And just, again, I've been trying to kind of mix it up versus, because it's funny, like kind of old adage is like, how many emails have you gotten in the past month that have said, hey, how are you doing? The list is long right now. And you appreciate that, but just trying to maybe send some of my clients just some like funny things just to kind of get their mind off of it, right? Because it's just in your face right now. You can't get away from it. But just saying hello and, maybe it was someone I hadn't helped out before, but just to say, if there's anything I can help with, great. If not, fine. There's no problem to that. I want to be just a genuinely just available resource to them. And then if someone even just wants to have a conversation and just talk and be like, look, here's how my week's been, right? I'm happy to do that too. But I think just going the way you did business even 45 days ago, if you're still doing it that way, you better stop doing it that way, because right now is not the time, because whether people have been impacted by loved ones who have gotten sick or maybe unfortunately passed, I mean, because it's there, right? But just being just a genuinely just kind of good, caring friend, I think is kind of the way you want to go about it. And you just kind of, let people kind of go at their own pace too, because we can't sort of go about, with the same expectations either.
So, I mean, those are some really, really good points. I think there is the commonality that we are all in this together. And that's where I've heard some really amazing stories on all of this. Now, you said that in your business, you put together, you're kind of a go-between. So you have your clients, and then you have the event centers and the hotel
Right.
hotels and their event centers and so on. So are you making the same kinds of calls to them, or are they reaching out to you? How are those conversations going?
I really am. I mean, obviously, from the what I do from a business perspective, right? My clients come first. They're number one for me. Always have been, always will be. But and I think really my company as a whole, we've always, and it's been probably going on for I'd say 6-7 years, but we were kind of really the ones that adopted kind of the philosophy to say, look, relationships matter, right? And they matter in business. There's no denying that. And I feel that's kind of what maybe helps us stand apart from some others in our space. But the other part is, you know what? Connection to connection and human to human relationships really do matter. And if you were just kind of being kind of business-like with somebody, you've got to just kind of divert from that and say, hey, how's the family doing? How are you adjusting to maybe being, a teacher right now when you're not? And how are you adjusting to just a different way of life that for most folks has not been normal? And so it's just kind of really showing some empathy and some just genuine compassion for just people trying to be people right now, because no one has anything normal. And you've got to be very cognizant of that. But equally as such, too, kind of you're saying, connected with the convention centers, talking to them if there's some involvement, but it's very different and it's not the norm. And you just have to say, you know what, okay, what adjustments can I make to just, be a person, right? I think
Sure.
that's kind of where we are.
Empathy is so important, and making the adjustment to keep going forward in the best way. What right now, what are you worried about?
Well, honestly, for me, I'm worried about, I think really people and just families trying to kind of get back to normal, because I think that, I can tell you one thing for sure, like my kids, they don't want to have to deal with any of this school stuff next year.
Hmm.
They really don't. And I think that, knowing that, and we're not going to have, we hope to not have that conversation with our kids, obviously, but I think just for people and families in general is like, at the moment, I think the concern is how are they feeding their family, and how are they just kind of paying the basic bills, right? Because let's be honest, that isn't happening either. Because unfortunately, millions of people have lost their jobs, or they've been temporarily laid off. And it's, for some, not only is it a financial stressor, but it's just, it's an emotional stressor too. And so it's a concern of, I think, trying to have a little bit of normalcy. And I think some things are happening across the country and the globe that are allowing that to happen. But, my concern is that I don't want to see this to be the long-term sort of way of life for people, because I think it's just human beings. We can't keep going like this. Do we have to go about it like this now? Sure. But I don't see that. I think this could, if we kept going this way, the concern is this could really impact folks, not only from a challenging perspective, but again, like I said, kind of the mental aspect of this is like, how do we kind of get through some of this stuff? Because we're all having to adapt like we've never had to adapt in our lifetimes.
So the word adapting has come up several times in our conversation. And so where do we go from here as business owners, people in business?
I think as business owners, it's really just trying to work with folks almost somewhat at their pace if you're dealing with a customer, because the way you went about things 2 months ago, you just can't keep going that path right now. But I do think there's something to be said, especially in my industry, where historically things were getting booked, 2, 3, 4 years out, right? This year in 2020, it's touch and go like it's never been before, right? But I think if you kind of look into, say, 21 and beyond, I do feel that there are opportunities to be had from that. Because we as a country, we cannot close. we just can't do that, and obviously everyone looks at things from a health aspect right now, and you don't want to see people, from a health scenario, unfortunately go through some really difficult times with this. But there's the other side of this coin where we've got to say, like, look, we as a country and we as a society and we as a world, right? We've got to, we just can't stop what has gone on. It's a major speed bump that we're all having to kind of just navigate around right now. But I think that from a business owner perspective, we keep working through it, and we just got to be willing to make some changes and make some sacrifices too. Honestly, you may have to kind of sort of look at like what your kind of sort of daily world is, right? And maybe what you were doing or spending this on and that on, and say, hey, right now can't do that, or maybe this we'll table for the time being. But and will some of those choices have to be pretty difficult and challenging from a business owner? Absolutely. I mean, there's no easy decision right now, but you sometimes got to say, look, this is what I've got to do for this moment in time to keep pushing forward and keep getting through this. And I think if you're willing to make those acknowledgments, not only internally to your business, to your family, you will make it through this. And for me to tell anybody it'll be fine, I'm not saying that yet. It's tough. It's pretty difficult. But I think if you're willing to just make some sacrifices and do some of those necessary things right now, that'll make you such a more resilient business owner coming out of this, that you'll be so thrilled to be able to have this eventually in the rearview mirror.
That pushing forward, finding different ways, looking for bright outcomes, what you can do now, all of those kinds of things are ingrained in our American entrepreneurial spirit, I think, and the human spirit. And so that's really good to see those kinds of changes, or those things happening with a lot of different people coming together. Your business is so multifaceted, from the fact that, you have all kinds of different occupations within a hotel, within a convention center. Then on the other hand, over here, you have the customer that wants to put on a wonderful event and bring all kinds of people together, right? And what goes on right there is that, you've got contracts, right? Which contracts are still valid? Which are going to, as we progress in time, which contracts still need to be honored? Which ones are being pushed back? And then you got people at home that can't afford this at all. Lots of people. So there's a lot going on all at once. And I don't know, do you have one last, say, lesson learned, or one piece of advice that you've learned from all of this moving forward?
I really do think, Steve, that if I were to kind of just, I don't know if it's kind of being able to give somebody a piece of advice right now, because this should honestly not happen in anybody's lifetime. It's not like, we're going to have a little bit of a recession, which happens every 10 to 15 years, just right. That's a little different, obviously. Right. But when you've got something, as small yet as magnitude driven as a virus that can just literally shut down an entire planet, right? I mean, that's what has happened. It has shut down the world. And with the business that I do, which is not only US, but it's also in European countries and others, and I'm just seeing this exact same thing over there, and just the severity of what's happening in countries around the world. Right now, it's just, if I were to kind of say anything to anybody, it's like, just take the time to take a breath, right? If you've got your health right now, and if you've got your family, that right now is the one thing you need to just embrace and take care of. The little things that kind of upset you or ticked you off, right? Gone. It just, and it really is kind of like it's equally the little things that do matter right now too, because you've got to say, hey, you know what? Look, if I can wake up in the morning, right, and I'm able to just, I'm at home and I'm kind of sort of here, but if I can just have that cup of coffee and just kind of get through the day, you put that kind of thing in the win column. And that's all you can do for that one day. And for the next day, it's kind of the old adage, like, if you're trying to forecast something, stop forecasting it. There's nothing to forecast right now, right? Like if you wanted me to figure out something for next Tuesday, it isn't going to happen. It just,
Oh, yeah.
all I can do is take it
Yeah.
one day at a time. And
Well,
right now, things are not easy.
what I'm hearing from you, Chris, is just, the realness, the rawness of what's really going on, because we don't really know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Uh, we take it a day at a time. We understand what's important in, our family and so on and so forth. And this, I mean, it just points out what we both know, what everybody knows, that this is much more than a stumbling block or a bump in the road. I mean, we're all getting excited about the prospects that maybe they'll start letting us come out a little bit at a time and that sort of thing. That's a really exciting concept. And at the same time, we haven't even begun to experience the full ramifications of all of this. What's coming down the road.
Yeah. And I just think that, again, it's, there's a lot more to kind of, there's a lot more shoes that are going to have to fall right now. It will continue to take place. Um, just personal business, whatever is going on out there. But I think this is really kind of equally has caused a lot of people really around the world just to appreciate what they've immediately got around them. I mean, just ironically was email with a friend this morning, different part of the world. And she's like, look, like right now I've got a roof over my head and I can put food on my table. And that's where you've got to leave that, because the business things, they'll get themselves worked out. Like you said, like in my space, dealing with contracts and all these things and obligations, if you will, everything's getting reevaluated because you not only on my side, but on the hotel or convention center side, we've all got to look at things and say, okay, look, what we did, fine. Here's what we have to do now, right? And let's equally come together and find a way to move forward. And if that takes a little bit of time doing that, that's okay too, right? But that's kind of sort of my just kind of sort of process of saying, just, hey, we're literally all kind of stuck in this together right now. So how do we equally find a way to get out of this together, right?
Right.
And what businesses forecasted they have for revenues for the second and third and fourth quarters of this year, it's over, right? Like it's just, we've got to find a way to say, look, we know what's going to happen this year. We know where things are going to end up, and it really does stink. There's no way to slice that pie, but we've got to say, okay, how do we try and take steps forward, and how do we maybe like do things next year, right? But it's just and anybody you talk